There are firsts for both teams entering this matchup. This is Ohio State's first road game. They've played 5 games. They're 5-0 in all of those games, but they've all been home games. So this is Ohio State and Ryan Day's first journey in the 2022 season. It's their first journey outside of Columbus, Ohio. And for Mel Tucker and Michigan State, it's their first time facing a ranked opponent in this season. Their first time facing a top 10 opponent this season. So, firsts for both teams. Ohio State's 5-0. They're 2-0 in conference. Michigan State is 2-3, 0-2 in conference. And both of these teams, both from a power ranking standpoint, efficiency ranking standpoint, just eye test, everything points to just complete differences in how these teams are playing. These teams are on not just 2 different tiers, they're on 2 different tiers, and there are a whole lot of tiers in the middle between these 2 teams. Ohio State travels to face Michigan State this weekend. This is a game that in the preseason, to be fair, was viewed as a potential trap game for Ohio State. You looked in the preseason, and no one in their right mind would have picked Michigan State to be the better team than Ohio State, or to beat them on a neutral site or beat them in Columbus. But it's East Lansing, Spartan Stadium. It is not a 100,000 capacity stadium, but it makes noise of its own. It has an intimidating factor of its own, like most Big Ten stadiums, like most Power 5 stadiums, when a good team is playing within them, when they have a dedicated fan base and hype around the team. There was this view that Michigan State, since it was Ohio State's first road test, they could catch Ohio State off guard, not playing on their A game, which is fairly common for a team on their first road test to not play their A game. But there was this hope that for some that Michigan State could, they could have fun and they could sneak around and this could be a trap game for Ohio State. And there's a certain degree to where that might still be the case. And that's why we're talking about this game and previewing it, to give analysis for both sides, give my opinion for both sides, and at the end of this video, make a prediction. But Michigan State, there was some talk around them bringing a championship to East Lansing from some. Others, like myself, thought they would finish 3rd or 4th, but they'd still be a top 25 team. There was an anticipation from basically everyone, this is the point that I'm trying to get to, that this game would be a top 25 matchup. It's not that. Michigan State's 2-3. They've underperformed drastically in the expectations category. Ohio State is performing about where everyone, myself included, expected them to be. So this game, looking at it just from the surface level, it's a game where it just looks like it's another sort of easy cakewalk for the Buckeyes. But is that actually the case? And let's get into talking about that. So number 3, Ohio State, 5-0, on the road against 2-3 Michigan State. Ohio State, let's just get this over with. Staff, depth chart, everything except home field advantage points to them. Ryan Day is the better head coach. Kevin Wilson, though he doesn't call the plays, that's Ryan Day for Ohio State. He's the better OC than Jay Johnson. Jim Knowles is the better DC than Scotty Hazelton. And that's just the coordinators. You want to go deeper into the other position groups? Be my guest. Staff-wise, it's all Ohio State. Quarterback, Peyton Thorne versus CJ Stroud. You take CJ Stroud all day. Miyan Williams and Trevion Henderson are infinitely a better running back duo than Jalen Berger and Jarek Broussard. I think Elijah Collins should get in the game more for Michigan State. He looked better than Jalen Berger last week, and he averaged 7 yards a carry and got a touchdown. He was nearly a 1,000-yard rusher in 2019, which was a Michigan State team that looked pretty similar to this year's team. So Collins knows how to do the best that he can with this kind of Michigan State team. I think a genuine opinion of mine, starting him at running back would be good for the Spartans. Wide receiver is a position that's actually closer than many would want to believe, especially with Jackson Smith and Jigba having questionable health this year. But Julian Fleming, Emeka Egbuka, Xavier Johnson, Marvin Harrison Jr., I would take them over Jaden Reed, Keon Coleman, Jeremy Bernard, all of them, though that is close, especially with Jackson Smith-Njigba being, injured and questionable right now from what I understand, while Jaden Reed is back and fully healthy. Tight end, I would take Cade Stover over Daniel Barker. In trench play, where Michigan State this year has either been A, unhealthy, or B, an atrocity, while Ohio State's improved on the offensive line and the defensive line. Linebacker, Ohio State's linebackers, I called that the weakness of their entire team. That no longer looks to be the case, honestly. Steel Chambers and Tommy Eichenberg are playing next to or at All-American level. Defensive back is an area where Ohio State and Michigan State can relate, especially corner. Safety's another story. But at corner, Denzel Burke and Cameron Brown, they've not been playing well, or they've been dinged up. And for Michigan State, Chester Kimbrough, Amir Speed, they've been terrible all year. Ohio State is just the better team. They're absolutely the better team. You can't beat around the bush there. They're completely the better team. This game being a 4 p.m. game airing on ABC, later time is going to favor the Spartans in that sense. Later time. Nighttime environments always help with home field advantage. The fact that this is a 4 p.m. game and not a noon game actually makes me more excited to cover this game. 4 p.m., kind of an interesting time slot. 4 p.m. Eastern time, it'll air on ABC. Ohio State is given an 88.6% chance to win, according to ESPN's FPI. The spread opened up in the mid-20s, and it's been growing ever since, understandably, as the Buckeyes are favored by 27 points. The spread might grow to 30 or beyond 30 by the time this Saturday hits. I don't know, but just looking at everything, you look at this game, you look at the spread being 27 points, you look at how Michigan State has been playing. They've had 3 double-digit losses. Ohio State's 5-0. They have the number 1 offense by efficiency in the country. They hung 52 on Wisconsin, hung nearly 50 or above, I think it was 49, so nearly 50 on Rutgers. This team is rolling. Ohio State is peaking. Michigan State is sinking and sinking. They might have already surpassed their trough because they looked better against Maryland than they did against Minnesota. But this team either bottomed out against Minnesota, or they're close to bottoming out, or they've already hit the bottom, or maybe they're slowly trending their way back up. But they're not a top 25 team right now. It would take them winning this game for them to be even considered top 25 caliber again. So previewing this game and looking at everything that's taking place, Ohio State rules on the depth chart. They rule in raw talent. They rule by staff. Michigan State, they just have the home field advantage and the extreme underdog mentality. That's all that is going for the Michigan State Spartans here. Ohio State's ranked second in ESPN's FPI. They're the nation's 3rd most talented team, and they're the 2nd most efficient college football team. For some comparisons in the Big Ten, Michigan is 3rd. They're the 3rd most efficient team, and they're the 4th in ESPN's FPI. I think they're number 14, according to 24/7 Sports Talent Composite, which is what I use to measure team talent. Penn State's 15th in the Talent Composite. They're 12th in FPI, and I think they're 16th in efficiency. The Spartans, who were picked to probably be the 4th or maybe 5th behind, let's just say, Wisconsin, who is also 2-3 and fired Paul Chryst. Michigan State is 32nd in ESPN's FPI. They're the nation's they're the 34th most talented team. I don't know why that says 84th, but ignore that. And the Spartans are the 73rd. That's not a typo. That I know for a fact. The 73rd most efficient college football team. 73rd. They're 80th something in defense and special teams. I think they're like 50th or 60th something in offensive efficiency. The Buckeyes are first in offensive efficiency. I think they're 25th in defensive efficiency. They're strangely enough toward the bottom in special teams efficiency. Michigan is near top 10, top 15 in every kind of metric. They're just not number 1 or top 5 in any metric like Ohio State is, which puts them below the Buckeyes in efficiency. So not just by my own analysis or the eye test or looking at all the games that have been played, but Michigan State's double-digit losses, their lack of talent, and just everything else in between just, points to the disparity between these two teams. And the 84th most talented team, that might as well not be a typo, because how Michigan State has been playing over their past 3 games would indicate such that they're the 84th most talented team rather than the 34th most talented team. It's insane how inefficient the Spartans were, especially compared to last year where they were ridiculously efficient. We know that a lot of that had to do with Kenneth Walker, but I would say that putting all of last year on his back, there might be a fair point to that, and there's a possibility of that, but it's just, to me, it's strange. There's like a stark difference between this Michigan State team, and I apologize if there's any background noise. I'm in my car again. There's a stark difference between this Michigan State team and last year's Michigan State team. There's a very stark difference. There's a lack of mental toughness from this team. This team cannot stop the run. They can't stop the pass either, but they can't stop the run, and that's part of the reason their secondary isn't ranked as bad as last year's. Not because it's gotten better. It's the same. It can't get worse than last year's, but it's basically the same. The difference is you can actually run against the Spartan defense. So why would you run an air raid against it when you can run a balanced attack and get 500 yards of offense per game? This team can't stop the run. Their defense is only good in goal line situations, and that's on and off to a certain degree. They don't have mental toughness. There is little semblance of a pass game, little semblance, even less of a semblance of a run game. The wide receivers are still good. That's probably the one bright spot of this team, is when Peyton Thorne hits his throws, he's on target, the wide receivers have a capability to make plays. Ohio State, on the other hand, they're pretty similar to last year's team, more similar than Michigan State is to their 2021 counterpart. The difference is Ohio State, on top of their offense being good, and it's different, it's not as good in the passing realm because of their wide receivers and the fact that they don't have Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, and they're also honestly missing Jackson Smith-Njigba with his health concerns. But CJ Stroud has improved, so the passing game has only slightly stepped back, and because of Stroud's efficiency, that's really masked that. Stroud just being much better than he was at this time last year. And Ohio State's defense, let me tell you something. They have stepped up. And granted, they have not faced a true offense yet, and they're probably not going to face that good of an offense until Michigan. I think that Penn State will be the best offense they face so far when they do travel to Beaver Stadium, but Michigan's going to be the greatest offense, I think by a mile, that they face in Big Ten play. So it's going to be interesting, but Ohio State, they've already been tested in that run defense game against Wisconsin and Braylon Allen, and against Notre Dame, who had a great offensive line. They fared well too. So both teams having some contrast compared to last year's units. And the players of the game, guys who I think you all need to watch, would be the quarterbacks. Honest to goodness. Because if Michigan State wants to win this game, Peyton Thorne has to play like he did against Washington. Actually, Peyton Thorne needs to play his best game of the entire year. The whole team, the whole Spartan team has to play its best game that they have all year. Peyton Thorne, he's thrown for 1,121 yards, which is tied for 60th in the nation. 8 passing touchdowns, which is tied for 53rd. 6 interceptions, which is tied for 109 nationally. And he has a QB rating of 58, which is 65th nationally. And he has a passer rating of 131.2. Compare this to last year, where Peyton Thorne had a passer rating of 148.1. He broke numerous school records, and he had a top 25 QBR. Losing Walker, listen, it heavily affected the play-action game, which was a huge part of Peyton Thorne's game last year. Just look at all the flea flickers that Michigan State successfully ran. But there's other things that are going on. Taking away a running back, granted a very elite running back, but taking him away shouldn't result in this drop of production and drop of skill and capability that we have seen from Peyton Thorne. So there are other things at work. He's constantly being rattled, and I think just with, Walker leaving too, but also the style of running backs that you have now, with Berger, the offensive line being worse than last year, all these things come together, and Peyton Thorne is essentially on, mostly third and long situations, if not second and long, or first and 10, dropping back, and he has to make all the plays by himself, and that's unfair to him, and it also stinks, and that's a very easy way to get your confidence rattled. But Peyton Thorne has capability. He has talent. And if Mel Tucker is the coach that people say he is, and I believe that despite all that's going on this year, he should get a pass if he has a losing season this year, like a slight pass, because this roster and this team, their talent is far worse than I thought. Like, even if this coaching staff was better, I don't think they would come close to contending for the Big Ten with this current roster. But Thorne, if him, the wide receivers, if Jay Johnson, if they can put together a game plan and execute it, especially with Ohio State's problems with corner and the fact that, you're Michigan State. You have Jaden Reed and Keon Coleman. You're not Wisconsin, who has to rely on tight ends and Kymir Dyke to make plays. Like, you have a wide receiver core. If Peyton Thorne can be on his A game, you can pass up and down the field, and if your offensive line can be inspired somehow by a miracle, be healthy, and be tough, you can score on this Ohio State defense. It is not a top 5, top 10 unit. It just isn't, especially in pass defense, which to Michigan State, and probably to a certain degree Mel Tucker's disgust, as he's a defensive coach and likes to run the football, you're a pass-focused team. Stop running the football, run your air raid. It didn't work passing a whole lot didn't work so well against Maryland, but Maryland's secondary is probably better than Ohio State's secondary, if I'm being honest with you. Going to CJ Stroud, and then we'll get into the prediction element of this game. Quarterback CJ Stroud. And my reference to Maryland having a better secondary than OSU was Maryland's secondary is legitimately good. They covered Michigan State well. They covered Michigan well. Their secondary is experienced, and it's legit. Ohio State, their safeties with, Tanner McAllister and Ronnie Hickman, they're solid, but they do have concerns at corner, especially with Denzel Burke. Quarterback CJ Stroud, I'm not going to talk about him as much as Peyton Thorne because we all know what he is. He is even better than he was last year. He's playing similarly to how he played last year in November in the bowl game against Utah. He's thrown for 1,376 yards, which is tied for 26th in the nation. He has 18 passing touchdowns, which is third in the nation. Only has thrown 2 interceptions, which is tied for 33rd in the nation. And he has a QB rating of 93.7, which is second in the nation behind Kansas's Jalen Daniels. And he has a 196.3 passer rating compared to his 186.6 passer rating of this past season. CJ Stroud will have a game. It is the probability of Michigan State's defense stepping up enough and CJ Stroud playing a worse enough game for him to not produce numbers and points, the probability of that is you might as well round it down to 0 because it's 0.0000. Somewhere in there, you find a 1. And that's that. But he's probably going to be the player of the game because Michigan State's run defense, listen, it's not good. It's still better than their pass defense. And Miyan Williams, he's a great running back and such, and he'll be used. And at the same time, Ryan Day is a very technical, mechanical guy. He's a genius, and Ryan Day is not going to be someone who's going to overlook anybody. So Ryan Day is going to attack Michigan State's biggest weakness on defense and attack it often, which is their secondary. So both of these quarterbacks, those are going to be the players of the individual teams to watch. If Michigan State wins, I guarantee you it's because Peyton Thorne pulls together a majestical, never-before-seen performance by himself. If they play Ohio State close or in the game for a few quarters, it will be because of Peyton Thorne in the pass game. And that leads me to my prediction. This game will not be close. I do not see it being close. Now, do I see it being more competitive than last year's matchup, despite the fact that Michigan State isn't a top 10 team? Yes. And that's because it's at Spartan Stadium, which even then, the Buckeye presence at Spartan Stadium, that is going to be something else. That's honestly going to be something else. They're going to be there on the road. Presence is going to be strong. And yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I think that it's probably going to be half Buckeyes, half Spartans in that stadium. CJ Stroud and Miyan Williams, they will excel. They will be amazing, both through the air and on the ground. Ohio State might average 10 yards per play, which means every time the ball is snapped, Ohio State will get a first down. That would not surprise me at all. And Ohio State is going to dominate in the trenches. They're going to have great offensive line play, great defensive line play. They're going to pressure Peyton Thorne out of his mind. They're going to protect CJ Stroud. They're going to, open up holes for Miyan Williams. And look, Ohio State, with just their efficiency on offense and the fact that their defense has improved, I'm expecting Michigan State to, at least put one solid drive together early in this game that probably results in 7. I'm honestly expecting that. And I'm expecting Michigan State to not play as poorly as they did against Minnesota. They're probably going to play similarly to how they played against Maryland. The difference is this is Ohio State. This is a top 4, actually, they're definitely a top 3 team. Like, no matter what, you cannot rank Ohio State lower than 3. That would be heresy. This is Michigan State's first top 3 team they are facing all year. I think the Buckeyes are team number 1 in the nation. Michigan State is closer to team number 75 than they are closer to team number 50. That's just my opinion. This team is not playing good football. All 3 of their losses have been by double digits. Every team that they have lost to is not undefeated either. Washington lost to UCLA. Minnesota lost at home to Purdue. Maryland's lost to Michigan. Maryland is the best team that Michigan State has faced all year, in my opinion. This game will likely be over by the first quarter, if not by halftime. And nothing but a slight gut feeling from myself indicates any hope. And that gut feeling isn't saying Michigan State's even going to win. It's just saying they might come out with a surprise here and this could be a game. Nothing but a gut feeling indicates that. Mel Tucker needs to come ready for war if they want even a shot to win this game. They cannot play like they did against Maryland, where they had 6 penalties, where they averaged 5 yards per pass, and where they missed a field goal, botched an extra point, and were shut out in the second half. You cannot have that kind of game. You can't if you want any chance here. You just can't do it. You can't score with not even 1 minute remaining, and that be your first score if you want to win this game. Can't play like you did against Minnesota. Can't play like you did against Washington, where you make a mistake, trip in your own end zone and get a safety, where your passing defense allows guys to be targeted one-on-one and they just get burned and can't defend a pass whatsoever. You have to play the A-plus game if you're Michigan State just to have a shot. And even then, you're probably going to have to rely on Ohio State to, best. For them, at best, you're going to have to rely on Ohio State to play at around a C or D game, and for Michigan State to play their A game for them to win here. So Ohio State, I'm picking them to cover. I'm picking the over here. I think that Ohio State is going to win this in dominating fashion. They'll go 6-0, become bowl eligible, and be one of the first teams to do so. And Michigan State will fall to 2-4, and it will look even more likely that Michigan State will miss a bowl game this season. And that is all I have to say for this video. If you like this video, make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, and comment your thoughts on this video down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys around. Bye.